To get the Big Buck Registry after show and other exclusive content right now, go to patreon.com/Big Buck Registry. Today on Deer Hunt.
So back to my ADD and my other stuff. I have to keep going with signs. Something has to be there showing me that deer is still there. It's still going. But I mean, the biggest thing is you don't want to stop. You just keep going. If that deer keeps giving you sign to follow, just keep following. There may not be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because again, if you can get a good clear shot or you get close enough to see a deer, that alone, man, should be a trophy.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 298. Doug Whitcomb and Buck Hunt Secrets. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from -33 Merino Wool Layering System, keeping you warm on the coldest days while staying breathable and wicking away moisture on the wet ones. Rackology, everything you need in one bag. Now available at Rural King and Orslyn Farm and Home storefronts, or online at www.rackology.org. Grizzly Ears, the most advanced engineered wireless earbuds for the outdoors. Covert scouting cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Grizz Friction Wood Calls, custom-made calls that sound as good as they look. Mountain Deer Taxidermy. If you can dream it, we can make it. www.mountaindeertaxidermy.com. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. And show support for this podcast by visiting bigbuckmerch.com. That's bigbuckmerch.com.
Hey, this is Bruce Mitchell, the Alligator Man. You listen to my favorite podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Jim Burley from Western Extreme, and you're listening to my favorite Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is John Stallone with Interviews with the Masters Podcast. And when I'm not editing my own podcast, I'm listening to the Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to the show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, "Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry." It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we're out of harnesses. We need your help. Anybody that has spare harnesses, please send an email to jay@bigbuckregistry.com. Anyone who has hunted mature bucks has a secret or two about how to hunt them. Quite frankly, it's the foundation of this show. And then Doug Whitcomb said he figured something out. I was all ears. After all, he and a few people in his circle of hunters were killing mature New Hampshire bucks almost yearly without tracking snow. Not an easy task. Doug shares how he goes about his secret for hunting mature New Hampshire bucks without snow in this episode. We'll get to our entire interview with Doug Whitcomb in just one moment. But before we do, let's hear from our friends at -33 Merino Wool Products and Jim Keller with the Deer News. My experience started with a visit to the -33 headquarters in Ashland, New Hampshire, for a tour of the warehouse and factory, followed by an interview with John Glidden, the owner and CEO. John is a straight-shooting New Hampshire Yankee, if ever there was one, and that straight-shooting attitude reflects in his product. It's high-quality stuff that does exactly what the company says it will do. After a steady hike on a cold November day up the backside of a steep New Hampshire ridge, with the sun setting and the temps dropping, I wasn't soaked with sweat. Because of the -33 merino wool base layer, I was comfortably warm and dry and itch-free. Any perspiration was wicked away from my body, and my human scent was neutralized from the natural properties that the wool brings to the table. I was thankful that I was wearing that exact base layer when that dominant buck appeared, Rest assured, I'll be wearing my minus 33 merino wool base layer next year when the temperatures start to drop. I'd encourage you to check out minus 33 for yourself. Visit www.minus33.com. That's MINUS 33.com, and grab some base layers for the rest of this season or next. And please let them know you heard about them on the show by using the discount code BIGBUCK33 to get 10% off your next order.
Now here's Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Our first story this week, DOI Secretary announces $227 million distribution for conservation projects. This story is from the National Deer Alliance website and is related to a story from our last episode. U.S. Secretary of the Interior David Bernhardt recently announced that over $227 million would be distributed from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, the LWCF, to all 50 states, 5 territories, and the District of Columbia for specified park and outdoor recreation and conservation projects. The LWCF, created in 1964, provides funding for land and water conservation, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation projects. The fund is not tax-funded, rather it's funded by royalties collected from offshore oil and gas operations. The sum, which is a $57 million increase from last year's distribution, gets divided among federal, state, and local governments to purchase land, water, and wetlands for the benefit of all Americans. Additionally, funds are used for various conservation and recreation maintenance projects across the country. This is significant as the LWCF leverages additional public and private dollars to expand outdoor recreation opportunities for the American people and invest in conservation projects across the country, said Secretary Bernhardt. To date, more than $4.4 billion has been distributed to state and local governments, funding more than 440,000 conservation projects. Even more, the U.S. Senate recently announced the Great American Outdoors Act, the GAOA. This act will ensure that the LWCF will be fully funded at $900 million annually for the first time in the fund's history, ultimately resulting in larger annual distributions. To support this new legislation, visit the National Deer Alliance Grassroots Advocacy Center, where you can place your vote of support on the bill and directly email your senators to express your support. NSSF gratified to see firearm accidents reaching record low levels. This story is from the National Shooting Sports Foundation website. The NSSF is pleased to report that unintentional firearm fatalities reached their lowest level ever, according to the latest data from the National Safety Council's just-released Injury Facts Report for 2018. NSSF, as the trade association for the firearms industry and leading proponent of safe gun handling and storage, applauded the report, which shows fatal firearm accidents at their lowest levels since record-keeping began in 1903. The firearm industry has, for the last 2 decades, provided more than 100 million firearm locking devices, with new firearms sold, and through its award-winning Project Child Safe program, the largest and most comprehensive firearm safety program in the country. The industry's educational materials are widely distributed to gun owners by firearm manufacturers, retailers, instructors, and others nationwide. With approximately 100 million gun owners in this country, the data demonstrates that firearms can be safely owned and used and accidents prevented as long as secure storage guidelines are followed. Securely storing firearms when not in use is the number one way to help prevent accidents, thefts, and misuse, said Joe Bartozzi, the NSSF president and CEO. The National Safety Council data showed that for 2018, there were 458 firearm fatalities, accounting for less than 1% of unintentional fatalities from all principal causes. In the last 2 decades, from 1998 to 2018, accidental firearm deaths have declined by 47%. With reports of many people purchasing their first firearms due to safety concerns over the COVID-19 pandemic, Bertozzi reminds new gun owners to use the safety device that came packaged with their new firearm when their gun is not under their direct control. He urges new gun owners to strongly consider using an additional safety device such as a lockbox or lockable gun case, and to take advantage of the many gun safety resources at projectchildsafe.org, such as a video on the 10 Commandments of Firearm Safety. Also, with so many children at home because of COVID-19 related school closures, Bartozzi encourages parents to take the time to have the talk with their kids about gun safety and to use tools such as the McGruff on gun safety videos and a video on how parents can talk to their children about gun safety on the Project Child Safe website. As people stay home, Earth turns wilder and cleaner. This story is from the Fox News website. An unplanned grand experiment is changing Earth. As people across the globe stay home to stop the spread of the new coronavirus, the air has cleaned up, albeit temporarily. Smog stopped choking New Delhi, one of the most polluted cities in the world, and India is getting views of sites not visible in decades. Nitrogen dioxide pollution in the northeastern United States is down 30%. Rome's air pollution levels from mid-March to mid-April were down 49% from a year ago. Stars seem to be more visible at night. People are also noticing animals in spaces at times that they don't usually. Coyotes have meandered along downtown Chicago's Michigan Avenue and near San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. A puma roamed the streets of Santiago, Chile. Goats took over a town in Wales. In India, already daring wildlife has become bolder and hungry monkeys entering homes and opening refrigerators to look for food. Compared to the previous 5 years, March air pollution is down 46% in Paris, 35% in Bangalore, India, 38% in Sydney, 29% in Los Angeles, and 26% in Rio, as well as 9% in Durban, South Africa, according to NASA measurements. When people stay home, the earth becomes cleaner and wilder. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Tim Donzie, Daniel Applebaum, and John Geis for the leads on stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. And if you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Doug Whitcomb. Doug Whitcomb, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend? What's going on?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. It's good to have you on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
You know, you said something to me during deer season, and I think it was right after you killed a good New Hampshire buck. And it was during a time when there was no snow on the ground, and then your wife killed one. There was still no snow on the ground. And you said, we have a secret. I said, what do you mean you have a secret? And then it dawned on me, like, you're killing bucks with no snow on the ground in New Hampshire and killing the good bucks. You're not just killing a buck, you're killing good, mature bucks. And that kind of set the stage in my mind that this guy's doing something special. You've got no snow to work with, but you're still finding the big ones. So, and I was like, okay, yep, you have a secret. And I was reluctant to ask you if you'd come on the show to tell us the secret because, you know, a lot of guys don't like to share their secrets about deer hunting. But you said, absolutely, let's do it, man.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, you know, we're all in this together. You know what I mean? We're all going after the same animal. You know, if I see a buck, you see it too. So, I mean, it's not really a big secret. It's just a matter of, you know, who took in more learning back hunting with the old timers. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's pretty much what it boils down to. We spent a lot of time in the woods with my grandfather, my uncles, you know what I mean? And they're all pretty much, they're called hillbilly. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Up in the woods, but.
Yep. Tell me about yourself a little bit, Doug. I just want to set the stage so that people watching and listening understand who you are, where you're from, and kind of your background, how you got into hunting in the first place. Who are some of the people that kind of showed you the ropes? Tell us about yourself.
Yes, I'm 36 years old, live in Francistown, New Hampshire. Born and pretty much raised in Keene, New Hampshire. We went out to Arkansas for about 8 to 10 years. I grew up out there for quite a while. Did the big rodeo circuit and all that stuff, and my dad trained horses. And I'll tell you, out there is a different living, and it's a different hunting style. There's wild boars, there's armadillos, there's more deer than you could shake a stick at. I mean, there's more deer in Arkansas than there is in Pennsylvania and New York.
Right.
So I learned a lot out there also. My biggest background is pretty much hunting, really. I'm hunting and fishing, and I'm a diehard turkey hunter. I'd rather turkey hunt than deer hunt sometimes, but depending on the season, I guess, depending on how my year's going, you know.
Right. Yeah. No, I get it.
We moved back here and pretty much set the stage for hunting here, and it was a completely different animal. My dad's like, hey, you know, they got a youth weekend. You want to try it out? And I was probably 10, 11 years old, maybe 13. And I just, why not? And let's try it. And we went out, didn't really see much because we lived here for maybe a year prior. Mm-hmm. So we didn't do a lot of scouting. He didn't have a lot of time to take me out and stuff like that. But when I came back here, it was a different situation. You know, it wasn't as easy as I expected it to be, and it made you push a little harder to get something. You know? But,
right.
And as the years progressed and we saw less and less deer, and the deer population kind of dwindled a little bit, and then it came back, and then it dwindled a little bit more, and it all depends on the area as you go. But my father showed me the ropes as far as hunting in Hampshire and Arkansas, really. I mean, he showed me everything he known. He passed away, and once he passed away, I set new goals for everything. I was going to shoot a 200-pound deer. I was going to shoot a bear because his life goal was to shoot a bear, and he never made it. So the year that he passed away, I shot a nice bear, almost 300 pounds. Shot it with my nephew that my dad raised. So, I mean, it pretty much took off from there, really.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
I was into hunting prior to that, of him passing, but it was mostly to spend time with him, you know, to hang out with him. And that was our time that we got to shut down and relax and not do anything and kind of hang out, you know,
Yep.
And not worry about money and what we're going to do tomorrow for work and so forth. So it was nice. And we had a nice place up in Vermont that we went to and hunted every year. And he just got me into it hardcore. And it's,
Great.
you know.
Carrying on his legacy.
Yeah. I mean, he had a huge legacy. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
he was well known, but
yeah.
That man shot more bucks than I could probably ever think of that were over 200 pounds. I mean, I think the year he passed away, he was up to, I want to say, almost 13 bucks over 200 pounds.
See, now that to me in New Hampshire, once you start talking to guys that kill one or two, now you've got my interest over 200. But if you talk about multiple bucks in the teens, you know, somewhere between 10 and 20, you're probably talking to one of the best deer hunters in the state that ever lived, really. I mean, that's not easy to do.
He never considered himself that.
Correct.
You know, he smoked cigarettes. He never used scent killer. He never washed his clothes. He wore regular jeans and a plaid shirt and, you know, his wool clothes during the winter time. So, I mean, he never really got into all that fancy dancy stuff, you know, and he proved to me that he didn't need to. You didn't need to have all that fancy stuff to kill big bucks. You know, I mean, you know, I would say probably 8 of the bucks he shot, I was with him, that were over 200. And he was smoking a cigarette, sitting on a stump.
Right.
You know, so, and it is what it is when it comes to that point. You know what I mean? You just got to be lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. And you got to know, you got to know the country you're in. You got to know, you know, once the deer are pressured down low, you got to take that advantage and go up high, or, you know, hunt certain hours of the day and stuff like that. And I've learned so much over the years from all our elders that I hunted with. And I mean, I took every advantage. If somebody offered to take me hunting, even if I didn't carry a gun, I went no matter what. Yeah. And I was, you know, my eyes were open and my mouth was shut. You know what I mean? And my ears were open, and I listened and paid attention to everything, and it's paid off. You know, it's we shoot 2 or 3 deer a year. My girls, my wife and my daughter, they both shot their own bucks now, and you know, I put them first with everything. But.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. What do you do for a living when you're not deer hunting, Doug?
Well, we own and operate Whitcomb Excavation and Property Maintenance, LLC. We do a lot of excavation work. We do a lot of work for farms, and we do a lot of spring cleanups, fall cleanups. We're pretty much an all-around company that really do everything and anything that will, you know, people need done around their property. If it's outside, we do it, you know.
Gotcha.
But, I started that up probably 6 years ago now. And one of the main reasons was that is so I can go hunting. I can make some more time for myself and my family and to go hunting. You know?
Right.
And I just got sick of working for everybody else and making everybody else money, and said, you know what, I'm gonna take a few months off, do some hunting, and figure myself out. And the best place to do it's in the woods.
That's right. That's right. So. And it's nice to have a self-employed gig, or a gig where you can make your own hours. And I think that's part of the success. Like, you have to. You know, deer hunting comes around once a year, and and the season is, you know, it's kind of a long season if you go from beginning to end in any place in the country, really. So, but you can't really, you know, I know some guys that work all the way up until about mid-October and take 30 days off straight, and then there are others that are self-employed or can make their own schedule. They have the freedom to go out and hunt when they want to. Even though it may not be great for the business, if you're self-employed, it's certainly, you know, you feel like you've cheated yourself if you haven't done that. in a lot of ways, right? So you do it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I can't necessarily say I'm going to take, work all the way up to, October and take a couple months off and go hunting. That never happens. Even if I plan on it and put the money away, or it just doesn't happen. I mean, we work year round. We worked all winter long, nonstop excavation, and the ground never froze, so we just kept hammering. And now we're still 4 months out, and we're just getting more and more behind with work. But
Gotcha.
It's great. The economy's coming back, especially with this COVID going on. That's kind of a horrible deal, but at this point, you make hay when the sun shines. And turkey season coming up. I'm gonna take off at least a day or two. I know like 4 or 5 years in a row, I told the wife I'm not going to shoot the first bird I see, but the first bird that walks in is usually the big one. So usually about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, open a day, I'm done. But
right. Now I want to talk about your turkey hunting adventures here in a little bit too, because you have a unique style there too, that not too many people do the way you do. And we going back to COVID, we did try to put together some conversations, face-to-face interviews, right? You and I, we tried to put this together a few times, and your work and your job, I guess, certainly was keeping you busy, and then came down to we had something planned, and I said, now COVID's out, do you still want to get together? He says, not really. So, and I understand that, it's kind of a freaky situation. Has that affected your business at all, or any of your plans?
To be honest with you, it hasn't affected anything with our business. It's messed up a lot of our plans, but it hasn't affected our business. And I say it messed up our plans because as the governor's coming on and he's interviewing and he's saying, this is what's going on, that's what's going on. I mean, we're in the mix of upgrading our business and buying new equipment, new dump trailer, excavator, skid steer, all that stuff. And that's huge money. And we were pulling out of the parking lot after we bought the brand new dump trailer. And it was a lot of money. And he said he was going to shut the government down. I mean, the state down and lockdown. And I'm like, I looked at the wife and I about got sick to my stomach because I was thinking about it. I'm like, now what are we going to do?
Right.
We just spent all this money on a brand new dump trailer and now we're not going to work. But, thank the good Lord that we were essential, for somewhat. But we're outdoors. We made a bunch of phone calls and we made sure that we were doing the right thing, going in the right direction. We had a ton of phone calls to the government and the state, and they verified that, yeah, you're good to go. You're an outside company, so we're not really worried about that because the virus doesn't really live outside in the air, and fresh air and stuff like that. So just keep your distance and don't be around anybody. So we did really well. We slowed down on our estimates a lot. Customers would stay in the house. We would do the estimate live, feed or whatever, and just kind of do it that way. But I mean, it hasn't really. I mean, if anything, we've gotten busier because people are home and they want to take their horses out of where they're keeping them, at a barn or whatever, and they want to bring them home. So in that case, we go in, we clear the property for them. We build a riding arena, or we'll build an area to build a barn. Do all that kind of stuff. So that has exploded. I mean, we've gotten super busy with that stuff. But it's kind of deflating for me at this point because it's like, hunting season's coming. Of course, I'm going to start getting busy. You know what I mean? But it's like you try to balance everything. But even owning your own business, I mean, back to that, you can own your own business. You can be a millionaire, and you still won't have enough time nor money to go hunting as much as you want to. You know what I mean? So
you still got to make time to hunt, because if you let your life and your job outside of hunting take its normal course, you'll overwhelm yourself with work, and you have to take that reset. And I think, to me, hunting is therapeutic. Like, I have to go do that to get my mind right, to get my head right,
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. The biggest thing is that I like to pull myself away after a few months of actually coming back in, like springtime, a couple months after we start, spring cleanups and stuff like that. I like to take myself away and just shut down. That's turkey season. And that allows me to recuperate my brain and my work ethic and everything else. So when I come back, I'm recharged. You know what I mean? My mind's fresh. I'm not cloudy. I'm not thinking about all this other work that's going on. So it rehabilitates you. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird to say it, but if you're a diehard, plus you own a business and you run a business and a successful business, it's a lot to take on,
right.
especially owning a business, period. And what I do is I do everything ourselves. Like I come up with all the designs. I do the work. My wife helps me. We have another gentleman that helps us every now and then. So, I mean, it's like we're trying to grow the business, but we don't want to be too big. So I have that on my mind. Plus I want to be successful in the woods. I want to be successful turkey hunting. I want to be different than everybody else. I don't want to be the same Joe Smo that walks into Dick's and grabs a turkey tag and a shotgun and some bullets and some decoys and some camo and goes out in the woods and goes hunting. I want to separate myself from everybody. I've built my business that way. I hunt that way. And pretty much my personality is that way. You know what I mean? And some people like it, some people don't. It's just the way life is.
Gotcha.
You know? But,
so you've always been generous to me, Doug, and I really appreciate that. You know, we haven't hunted together, but we always have a good time getting together at Morse's open houses and having some good yucks. And, you know, anytime we've ever gotten together, we always seem to get along real good and have some good laughs. And you've always been generous with, if I want, you know, for example, if Dusty's coming up from Ohio and he's trying to kill a bear, you've always been generous with spots if we wanted to take him. I don't think we ever actually took you up on it, but you've always been generous. So I appreciate that about you. And I think that's who you are in general. I think you are a generous person with information and helping people, and it definitely comes through. And
I appreciate it.
So getting back to turkey hunting, which is just around the corner, we're about, 2.5 weeks out or so in New Hampshire. It doesn't look like the governor's going to shut down any New Hampshire turkey season. At least I haven't heard anything about that. I know they've shut off some out-of-state stuff in other states. And some turkey seasons around the country have been shut down. I don't really understand that, and we're certainly looking into that some more as to what the sentiment is. Do you have any opinions on some of that stuff?
You know, I have to agree on some of that stuff, though, as far as out-of-state, because what happens is say you got a huge infection in Massachusetts. A lot of Massachusetts hunters come up to our state, New Hampshire, and hunt turkeys and stuff like that. So now you got to think about everybody that's down there, even if they're infected with the COVID and they have the virus and stuff like that. I shouldn't say infected, but they have the virus. They come up here, they go to Morse's to tag their bird in. Now they're giving the virus to everybody that's there, including, everything else. So the governor can't shut down the borders. But I think it would be a smart idea to lock us down to as far as hunting our own state. Don't hunt out of state. Residents only, no non-residents. If it comes to that completely, you can't shut down hunting season. It's outside. Right. It's not, you know what I mean? But I don't foresee that's going to happen anywhere in the future with the governor. I mean, not with Sununu. He's amazing. He's a kid at heart when it comes to hunting himself. So. Right. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but I do agree to the extent of, I know Carolina, I believe they shut down for out-of-staters and stuff like that, and a bunch of other places shut down for hunting itself, but they shut it down because they have like New York is so overpopulated with the virus going on, they don't want it to get out of hand. I mean, we're trying to flatten the curve, you know what I mean?
Right.
We're not going to flatten the curve if you got people coming out of New York, which I know a few people that I've seen around my own local area that are from New York, in the city part, and they come up here for a week and hunt turkeys. Right. They may not have it, but they could be a carrier.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And I mean, and in the end, I look after my family. You know what I mean? I still want to take my daughter out. I still want to take my wife out. You know what I mean? And we always take a few kids out that the parents don't hunt that are residents. So I mean, I don't want them to get infected with it. I don't want them to get the virus and stuff like that. So I don't know. To that extent, I kind of agree with it.
What if they went to a call-in system, a call-in check system?
I think that would have been the best move ever. I don't think you're going to see that this year, obviously, but I think we should go into a call-in system to begin with. But I mean, you and I, we're honest people, and you do have those people out there that aren't exactly honest that will kind of screw up the system, and that's probably the reason is, check them in person. You know what I mean? I personally like check them in person because I tell you, you go down to Morse's and it's awesome down there. I mean, I look forward to going to Morse's to tag my animals in just as much as I do hunting and filling my freezer. So I mean, going down to Morse's, I mean, Jim and all them guys down there, Randy and Tom, they're amazing people, and you go in there and they'll either pick on you or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you go in there and it's like family.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's huge for me because I don't have a family. Like, I have a family that, let me rephrase that. I have a family, but it's not a huge family. Just my wife, my kid, my daughter, you know what I mean? And I don't have a ton of people.
Right.
In my family anymore. Like, pretty much they've all passed away and moved on, or, they live in other states and we just don't communicate anymore.
Yeah.
So when I go down there, it's like, hey, look what I got. You know what I mean? It's
right.
Pretty much bringing it to my dad again, and they're just as excited as you are. And it's great, you know? And,
yeah. And you get a good ribbon when you go down there, no matter what you've killed.
No matter what it is. I mean, I've walked in there on some oops shots, and I've shot, I've shot a Jake before. It was like 13.5 pounds, and I'll never live it down. But you know what, though? That was one of the best hunts I've ever been on in my life.
Yep.
And I told that to them guys, and they're like, that's the best part about it. It's not about how big it is or whatever. It's about the hunt. You know what I mean? And to me, when I take an animal's life, I'm taking it to feed my family. I'm not taking it for a trophy. I've never shot a deer as a trophy. The deer I shot this year, absolutely trophy. My wife, absolutely trophy. But I can tell you right now, we're more blessed and thankful that we shot both of those deer now that the COVID virus is here, because we've not gone to the grocery store to buy meat.
Right. Not
an ounce. And it's amazing because it was almost like God blessed us with that, knowing that something was going to happen and preparing us for the future. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm not the big churchy person, but I believe in stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
right. It makes you wonder.
You know what I mean?
Makes you
Everything
wonder.
happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer of that. But yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, so back to the the calling in situation. I think we're better off staying where we're at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you'll take away from a lot of that stuff. You'll take away from a lot of the time going down to Morse's or your local gun shops and stuff like that. That's the only time people ever go there is when they go to tagging an animal.
Yep.
So,
gotcha. All right. So getting back to a little bit more on turkey hunting before we get into some deer hunting stuff, you have this gift, and it rivals our good friend Josh Carney. And Josh is a master vocalist when it comes to imitating animal sounds of all kinds. And you are in that same category. You use mouth calls. I back that up. Not mouth calls. Mouth calls are the things you put in your mouth. You don't even use that. You just use your own natural voice to recreate all turkey sounds and in a very effective manner. Like every time I've ever asked you or just looked on your social media profiles, you've usually tagged out on the first day, and then you're out taking everybody else out to hunt using your style. Can you describe and maybe even demonstrate some of your calling abilities and how you kind of got into just using natural vocal sounds to call turkeys?
Well, I tell you, we'll start off with how I learned how to do it. How's that?
Yeah.
So it's a real funny story. One of my best friends and I, Ben Kramer, him and I are diehard turkey hunters together. And we were out turkey hunting one morning, and it was pouring rain. And I mean pouring. And we both looked at each other like, dude, I don't care if it's thunder and lightning. We're getting a bird today. So one way or another, it happened. But long story short, our turkey calls weren't waterproof. So I said to him, hey, bud, let me try to mimic this hen. Because we had a hen going off, and she was ready to battle, like unbelievable. So I took it upon myself to kind of like mimic her a little bit. And he looked at me and he was like, dude, that's incredible. Keep doing it. Like the town's gobbling. So we got into it doing that. And I just kept practicing. And we ended up screwing up that hunt because I wasn't doing a very good job. But we went somewhere else and I'm like, let me try the purr and the putt. So we did the purr and the putt. And, it worked really well. The tom came in and we smoked them. And after that, it was like we both talked to each other and we're like, dude, we don't need turkey calls anymore. We just need your voice. So I practiced a lot. I sat down on my phone and I Googled a bunch of the turkey calling things because I mean, again, I wasn't really introduced to the turkey hunting. I kind of introduced myself to it. So I had to learn everything about the turkey hunting situation because my dad wasn't really a big turkey hunter. So I wanted to do it because I just wanted to be outside, and I learned how to do that. I Googled all the voices that the turkeys do and all the noises and stuff like that, and their drumming and everything. And I just sat down in a quiet room just by myself and just started doing all that stuff and trying to mimic everything. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually I, told the wife and showed the kid and everything else. And they were like, dude, you gotta do a calling competition. And I'm like, I don't know. So I posted a video, and there was a big competition going on in KTP, Critter Trading Post in Maine. And the wife's like, I love a road trip. I'm like, all right, we'll go do it. So I practiced really well and went up there, and I ended up taking second up there. And it was against some big dudes up there. I mean, there was like, these guys did world finals and stuff. And it was hard to judge me. And even the judges said that because I missed one call. I passed on one call. And he said if I didn't pass on that one call, I probably would have took it. But he said that, and he was a Quaker boy, I believe it was. He was a big, big hunter, Quaker boy. I don't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but he gave my daughter a bunch of stuff, all signed, autographed, a bunch of stuff. And he told me flat out, he's like, dude, don't stop what you're doing. You're blessed. You have got a gift. Nice. And he's like, and always remember, it's not whatever everybody else thinks. It's what's at the end of that barrel, holding that beard, is the judge of everybody. And if you can get him in, don't worry about what everybody else thinks. Because I've had people, you don't know what you're doing. That doesn't sound right. Doesn't sound good. This and that. And everybody has their opinion, But.
Yeah. No, I mean, the calling competitions are cool. And I think I actually recorded you at one of these down in Concord one time. And you were the only one that
one too.
Yeah, you were the only one that didn't have a device to assist. You were the only natural caller, and I was blown away at how authentic it sounded. And you're right; it doesn't. These competitions are set up to encourage the calling in the sport, and I understand that. But that's not really the test, right? The test is not the human judge. The test is the bird. That's really why you're doing it, and the rest of it's kind of a side gig, kind of fun, kind of to entertain yourself. Would you demonstrate for us a little bit how you call in a tom with your natural calling abilities?
Yeah, sure. I don't know how that's going to be on your recording here, but give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure it's not going to be like in person, but let's just show the people what it is you do when you've got a 10-inch rope dragger that's hung up and you want to get them across the stone wall.
Yeah. All right, we'll do that. So I have to picture this now.
That's crazy. Like that. And all you did, you just kind of Googled this stuff, then you just practiced that and figured out how to make those sounds.
It all started out in the woods that day when we didn't have a turkey call. And, we had turkey calls, but they were wet and they wouldn't work. And we ran out of chalk. And, my brother was like, well, try it, And he's not really my brother. He's one of my best friends. But he's like, well, try it. And I'm like, yeah, all right. So we did it, and it caught on. You know what I mean? It was just a matter of but again, it goes back to, I want to be different than everybody else. I want to hunt different than everybody else. I want to, I'm not the same Joe as everybody else. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've built, like I said, I built my hunting around it. I built my business around it, and it's been successful. So, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great talent to have. I've always been like a diaphragm caller. I never take out anything else. It's always worked for me, but man, I would really like to be able to not even use that. I kind of like the minimalist approach. I don't really want a lot of stuff. I prefer to hunt with less than more, and get down to it, to get down to brass tacks. But I've never been like I've tried. I mean, I after watching, I was like, I'm going to try this, and I'm playing around like, I can't get it, man. It's just not working. So I think some people get it and some people don't. I don't think I'm one of those people, but that's phenomenal talent to have.
Yeah, it's nice to have, and you look at these videos, and a bunch of my friends have tagged me, and I mean, you got these little kids, dude. They're like 10 years old, and they're just as good, if not better than me. And it's like, this is awesome. Like, I never want to discourage anybody from hunting or anything. I've always been that type of person that, if you can hold a gun and you're safe and you want to hunt, dude, I'm more than happy to take anybody out. I don't care who you are, what color you are, what race you are. It doesn't matter to me. It's just I love everybody equally, and I love hunting, and I think everybody should at least try it once. I think this world would be a lot better place.
I agree. I think it does so many different things. I think it's mental. I think it's physical. I think it clears your brain of all kinds of worries. I think it gives you a challenge that not well recognized in any other manner. I think it gives you a whole lot of respect for nature and the outdoors and the actual animal you're hunting. And if you do kill it and you eat it, there's a whole experience there that a lot of people are not getting into by going to the grocery store and not understanding that, there's a cycle here. There's a very touchy cycle here that if you are in tune with all the parts of nature and the animal, that you've missed the boat. There's a whole lot of respect that goes into killing an animal, and that if you don't experience that, I don't think you'll ever really respect what you're putting in your mouth, really, when it comes down to it.
No, and we ran into a bunch of people that are like, how do you kill an animal that's looking at you? How do you kill a living, breathing, blood pumping animal that is standing in front of you? I mean, I don't necessarily have a downfall with it, but the problem with it is that I have a heart, and I try to be as successful as possible in order to take the ethical kill, as far as putting it where it needs to be. And I've been blessed that my animals haven't gone very far to die. I mean, they've gone maybe 60, 70 yards, if that. And if I don't have a clean, ethical shot, I do not take it. And I know a lot of people, and a lot of people will probably be like, yeah, bullshit. That's not true. That's not gonna, you know what I mean? But it's true. I mean, I do not take it. I will not take an ethical. If I don't have an ethical shot, I don't take it, no matter how big the animal is. I mean, I've passed up on 12-point bucks, and just did not have a shot, and just, what are you gonna do?
Me too. I've had some monster 12s in range that I couldn't see well. I just didn't have the brisket shot. See lots of antlers, or I had him talking to me, and he knew I was there, and I knew he was there, but I didn't have the clear shot, and it probably wouldn't have been the biggest deer I've ever killed, but I didn't have it, and I let it run. So yeah, it is what it is.
That just makes you a better hunter.
Yep, I agree. Let's get into some deer hunting stuff. So and this is kind of what prompted us to talk in the first place. Is you guys have a secret, and the secret, and I'll let you explain. To me, and I'll just kind of recap what we started with, is that you're killing bucks without snow in New Hampshire, and big bucks to boot. So let's kind of get into that strategy of how you are able to accomplish that, because that is something that I think is unique. It's not easy to kill a buck in New Hampshire, first of all. Let's establish that. It's not easy to kill a mature buck in New Hampshire, and without the aid of snow, it adds a level of complexity that is even harder. So how are you doing it, Doug? And how did you get to this point?
So how I got to this point was I literally got sick of not being able to shoot bucks. You know what I mean? And I took a lot of time, and I listened to it. Perfect example, Big Buck Registry. Everybody that comes on here has information that they're telling you. You just have to be open to ears to listen to it and then use it. You know what I mean? Not necessarily abuse it, but use it. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean find out where they're hunting. It doesn't mean to call them and bug them about, well, hey, where were you? What time was it? Was it this? Was it that? Blah, blah, blah. It's just listen to what they have to say. A lot of people listen to the podcast and stuff. And especially there's a big podcast up in Maine. Perfect example. I listen to him when I'm in the shower. I just turn it on. I listen to you guys. I just turn it on when I'm in the shower. Mm-hmm. And I'm focusing on that. You know what I mean? And if I'm going down the road and I have a long trip ahead of me, about an hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever, I'll turn your guys' podcast on and just listen to everything. And the key word is listen. A lot of people don't listen. A lot of people they hear one thing, and they hear monster buck. I killed this monster buck. Yeah, well, you killed the monster buck, but how did you do it?
Right.
So I took everybody's information. A ton of people on your podcast, a ton of people on the podcast from Maine, everywhere else. I took all that information and kind of bundled it. And this was just 2 years ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm sitting in the woods up in Vermont, and you got nothing going on. It's quiet. Your mind's wandering. So I wanted to bring my mind back to hunting where I wanted to be, to just relax. And I just wrote down a ton of notes. Like, what have I done wrong over the years? I had an 8-pointer come in, and the wind was wrong. All right, so there's an indicator. The wind was wrong. So let's think about hunting the wind. Timing. Timing is huge. Everybody has to be in the woods. I mean, I drive by, I don't know how many trucks at like 4:30 in the morning. Everybody's already in the woods.
Right.
Great. But the problem of it is you're bumping that deer out of its bed, because that deer is just coming out of the fields, coming in to lay down, to get a few hours of shut-eye, to go back up to wander again. So you're pushing this animal into a different area. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've never shot a big buck earlier than 10 o'clock, ever.
Right.
Oh, my big deer. I mean, I've shot 140-pound does. They have not been shot before 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer with that. So, again, where I went back to is I wrote everything down in a note, and I just kind of duplicated I shot this deer at 10 o'clock. I shot this deer at 11:30. I shot this deer at 1:30. I shot this deer at, 10:45. And it's just, you have to think about that. To be successful in this game, you have to look outside the box. You can't follow people. You know what I mean? I mean, to this day, I still have people following me. Like, every now and then I'll see them drive by once I get up in the woods or something. You know what I mean? But it's like, people have to think outside the box. They have to, use their own. I mean, the deer, just like us. I mean, they're all different. Every single deer is different. You know what I mean? Different patterns, different everything else. And I spent hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on scent blocker, scent killer, the ozonics, the boots, rubber boots, all this other stuff. Did it work? It probably had a smidge to do with it, but the biggest secret of all is timing. You have to be at the right place at the right time. And if you talk to, a hunter that's been hunting for 40 plus years, he's going to tell you one thing. If you listen to him, keyword listen, right place at the right time. You go in a check-in station and you sit there for a couple hours and you watch these guys come in, every single one of them will say the exact words of right place at the right time.
Okay. So you started, it looks like you were keeping good notes, almost like a journal entry of your kills, and then went and identified certain patterns of what was occurring. And on the days you were successful, were you also keeping notes on the days that you were not successful?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, so leading up to the buck I shot this year, my nephew and I went out for 3 days straight, 12-hour days. And I'm like, we didn't see maybe 2 deer. We're like, what are we doing wrong? You know what I mean? And I sat down and I was just like, what am I doing wrong? Am I hunting too hard? Which you can do. You can hunt too hard. You push yourself too hard, you make huge mistakes that you don't realize you're making. That's what we were doing. We were doing huge mistakes. We were just bumping these deer all over the place. Deer can see a tick a mile away. They can smell a mile away. They can hear a twig break a mile away. So you have to be one step ahead of that animal. Especially the bigger they are, the smarter they are.
Okay.
And, it's great if you have snow and you can track and you get lucky, stuff like that. But when you don't have snow, you have to turn to whatever works. And, literally, it just, timing is everything. When we were seeing the deer, this was a week prior to when I shot my big buck and a week and a half or 2 weeks prior to my wife shooting hers. I realized the mistake we were making was the timing when we were going into the woods. We were going into the woods at dark and coming out at dark. And that doesn't make doesn't make it great because everybody's like, oh man, I hunt from sun up to sundown and I don't see anything. I seen this or I seen that. But the best time of it is that you're not hearing people when they say, well, listen, I saw this 10-pointer at 10:30. I saw, this monster 8 cross the road at 11 o'clock when I was heading to lunch.
Right.
So you'll if you listen and pay attention to what people say, or even just what you're doing, like we go to lunch all the time and we usually just go to the store, grab a quick sandwich or something just to kind of get away from the area, let it settle a little bit. And 90% of the time we see a deer crossing the road when we're going to the store. Every single time. And it's always around that certain time. So that's what made it click in my head is we're doing this wrong. We need to change up our timing. We need to be in the woods when everybody else is leaving. For one, they push them around. For two, it's a huge secret because every deer we've shot has not been before 10 o'clock in the morning.
Gotcha. Okay. So how do you figured out the timing? That's great. Mm-hmm. But you still got to be in the right place at this time. So how do you decide where the right place is?
Oh, man, that's a hard one because I'll tell you, it's luck. A lot of it is luck. Anybody can say they're the greatest hunter in the world, but I'll tell you right now, my dad told me he was a firm believer, and he told me this right flat out. He's like, you know what? You can be the best hunter in the world, see as many deer as you want. But when it comes to time to shooting that deer's on his own schedule. He's not on your schedule. He's not on anybody else's schedule. You have to read the ground. You have to read the food, where he's eating, what he's eating, when he wants to eat it, what the weather is at that point in time. This changes everything, especially with me. If it's raining, I'm going to do a different section. If it's sunshine, I'm going to a different section. If it's, cloudy, if it's windy, the weather plays a ginormous part in all of this.
Okay.
And, I mean, I'm not the best hunter in the world by any means. I'm just a regular old hunter, you know what I mean? But I try to, everybody wants to be successful, and I want to be as successful as possible. I want to shoot 200-pound bucks every year. Not because of it's a trophy. It's because that's a lot of meat in the freezer, man. That's a lot of money saved. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
You shoot a 200-pound deer, it costs you a couple $100 to get it cut up and packaged right and everything else. And, it's $200. There's no way. If I was to spend probably $15,000 to $2,000 on the meat that we have in our freezers right now.
Yeah. That's
my process of it. Which it doesn't make a change if you're going out for a trophy for $1 or if you're going out to meat hunt. It's not going to change any of that.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is we'll get back to is the weather. That boils down to the area. So now back to the area. The area is difficult because, you hunt swamps, you hunt power lines, you hunt big, thick woods, you hunt, all this other stuff. And a lot of these guys use cameras, and now they got these real fancy cameras that you don't even need to leave your house.
Right.
I have not used a camera at all since I've been hunting. My dad never used a camera, ever. He never used a trip line, timer, nothing. It just literally, the morning of, you hit the woods, and at that point in time, you look and see what's on the ground. And it doesn't need to be snow, doesn't need to be rain, you look at the poop, you look at the size of their poop, you look at their pee, you look at their tracks, where they're heading, all that stuff. That is what means everything. Okay. You can get cameras all year long with deer on it, okay? You can get cameras all year long with deer on it. Come hunting season, are those deer in the same spot?
No. Nope.
There you go.
Nor are they in the same spot at different times of the day.
There you
right?
go.
It could be that same time of year, different times of day, they're in different spots. So you can start to identify a pattern, but if your pattern is that they're showing up at midnight or 3 o'clock in the morning, that doesn't help. You got to figure out where they're going at sunrise or at midday. That's where you got to figure it out, right? So you're talking about sign. You're not talking about you're not using cameras. You're talking about the sign that's on the ground, and that's very interesting because that has been described in a few of our podcasts about the sign is more important than finding the sighting of the deer. Yeah. And I found that to be very true as well. So if I find the sign, I know the deer in that area somewhere, especially if it's fresh and is the right sign. So let's talk about the right sign. What is the right sign? Like, what gets you excited when you come across the right pee, the right poop, the right track. What is it you are looking for in particular to get you say, okay, this is the spot I need to be in at this time?
So we'll do a perfect example of when I shot my buck last year. My big buck I got. We walked in the woods. I was heading to my tree stand, and my nephew went down and around heading his stand, and he stopped and he said, "Hey, look!" And the buck just made a fresh scrape, and I mean the freshest scrape you could ever think of. And not even 10 to 15 feet from that, he peed. So that told me right then and there, he just got out of his bed. He is bedding in this area. He just got up. He's not far. So we backed out, came up with a game plan, and I said, you know what? I'm going to be here the rest of the day. Let's grab some snacks out of the truck and hammer this. We're going to kill him. So we backed out. We read the signs perfectly. Sometimes it doesn't happen. But at that point in time, we read it perfectly. He was bedded in that area. We actually found his bedded area. We found out where he peed, he's pooped. Because usually a buck will get up, he'll scrape, and then he'll be like, oh, I got to pee. Every male, when you get up in the morning, you got to pee. You know what I mean? So you got to think of that. So we found it, found all the perfect signs, headed out to the swamp where I knew he was headed because he had a scrape line out that way, got in front of him, and the rest was history. I mean, it just, you got to read sign.
Okay.
What you really have to look for is, if you come onto a bed, how fresh is the bed? Does it have frost in it? Is it wet? Is it dry? If you have a real dewy morning and the bed is dry, the bed's dry because he was laying in it all night long. So that automatically tells you that he was in this bed all night. So now he's not very far ahead of me. And then you can track deer on leaves. I've done it numerous times. That's the other sign you got to look for. If you're hunting a big trophy buck and that's your thing, perfect, good for you. Find how heavy he is, you know what I mean, and follow that trail. It's different than snow, you know what I mean. You may get to the end of that trail and it's a ginormous doe, but you're teaching yourself how to track that deer.
Right.
And that alone is a trophy. That alone is success.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's just as good as getting a deer in a freezer.
And to me, there are, you can get on a big track, and sometimes you can mistake a big track that could be just this huge doe, but does will do different things, right? They'll walk a little different, and it might be a little harder to see on wet, like a wet leaves or things like that. But they also move different. They also do different things along the way than a buck would, for sure. The way they move around a branch, for example, or move under a piece of brush. You can tell if they've bumped something, or maybe they'll do a little scrape or a little rub or something like that along the way. That will give you that indication. Okay, this is definitely that track that I was on, and.
Oh, yeah.
You get on them, but a lot of times tracks lead to other tracks, and then you can find maybe you follow that big doe for a little bit. Eventually, they're probably going to bump into a buck, and then there's a better sign right there. So, deer lead to deer is one of my 10 commandments, right? They do interact.
Where there's one, there's others.
That's right. That's right.
But I tell you, if I can give any information, it's just keep going. Don't give up. You know what I mean? Even if you've had a bad year, don't give up. Keep going. Just learn. You know what I mean? And I guess that's where a lot of people, I've done it myself because I have ADD, I have PTSD, and it's huge because I don't have patience at all, like limited none. And I'm a huge walker, and I'm 300 plus pounds, and my wife will tell you, I won't exercise a day in my life unless it's for hunting. And I'll walk 10 miles a day, and it doesn't bother me. But she asked me to walk down the road or walk a beach with her. Forget it, I ain't going.
Right.
But
right. So let's go back to the sign a little bit. Like, what's good poop for you? What gets you what gets you excited when you see poop?
Oh man, I tell you, when I see it's big, big fat chunks, almost like a rabbit turd. Big round ones. When you see the little tiny ones and they've got sharper edges, those are smaller deer, but they're smaller deer because they're younger. So stay away from those.
Right.
I've learned that the hard way numerous times. I spent hours doing that. But, the more rounded edge of the poop, the more mature that deer is going to be, the bigger that deer is going to be. The bigger the poop, the rounder the edges. You find one that's got a real nice round edge, like you really look at it and you study it, man, that's the deer you want to be looking for, because that's a good mature deer, whether it's a mature doe that's, had a couple bursts, or it's a big buck, mature buck, so.
Yep. And when you say, keep going, don't give up, and that persistence is definitely important. Getting down upon yourself after doing this for a while and not having success, that can definitely play with your head. Just keep going. And I understand that. When you are in the woods, though, when you are on the track of a buck or a deer that you think is a good deer that you're trying to get a look at, how much time are you spending in the woods, and what do you encounter, or what will you encounter along the way that'll keep you going on that track?
So back to my ADD and my other stuff, I have to keep going with signs. Something has to be there showing me that deer is still there, it's still going. I'm not going to lie to you. There's been one time that I come up on a big deer, and it was a gut pile. You know what I mean? I tracked this thing for days, and I would ribbon off a piece where I left off his track, and I would throw a few ribbons on the way out to my truck, and then the next morning go right back in, get right back on that same trail, and make sure I'm on that same deer. But the biggest thing is you don't want to stop. You just keep going. If that deer keeps giving you sign to follow, just keep following. You know what I mean? And there may not be a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but if you look back, you'll realize, like, hey, today wasn't a wasted day, even if you snuck up on a doe. Because, again, if you can get clear, a good clear shot, or you get close enough to see a deer, that alone, man, should be a trophy. Because getting close to a deer is nearly impossible in Hampshire, you know what I mean?
Right.
Let alone walk up on one in a bed, which I've done numerous times. But again, you can't give up. You have to keep going, but only keep going if that deer still shows you sign. You know what I mean? Like, if you lose sign of that deer and the tracks go away and leaves, or, it doesn't show you any rubs or scrapes or anything like that, then just back off and just do a small circle, and then just do a bigger circle, and just keep doing bigger circles until you get on more sign. Because that deer is in that area for a reason. You know what I mean? That deer is not alone. Yep. Just like we're not alone. We have a family. That deer has a family. You got to think of it that way.
So if you're covering ground, how much ground do you think, and how much area are you covering? How much area is that buck going to be patrolling before you're like, okay, he's out of his range? How do you decide that? Okay, and maybe as you're tracking, I think you said you did like 14 miles or something in one day, which is a lot. But is that common for you?
No, absolutely not. When I did the 14-mile, that deer was a monster. He made my wife's deer look stupid. And I caught up to him 2 or 3 different times. The first time I caught up to him, he was across the road. I couldn't shoot. The second time, he was too close to a house. The third time, I had a shot, but I didn't close my bolt all the way on my semi-automatic, and the pin didn't go off. So that's what kept me going on him for 14 miles. And that's the only reason. You know what I mean? If I didn't put eyes on him those 3 different times, I wouldn't have proceeded, because he was too far ahead of me, and he was just hammering. He never stopped. And you're only going to push a deer so far, and you're human. You're not going to catch that deer if you get him going too far and too fast.
Gotcha. So he gave you 3 different looks, you said?
Yeah, 3 different looks. And then after that, I just called it, and I'm like, you know what? Enough's enough. This boy is going to live to see another day, because I'm not pushing him. I'm not going to keep hammering him. Because in hindsight, you don't want to push that deer out of his area, because you push that buck out of his area, it's just like you move into a different state and you find another girlfriend. You know what I mean? You're not going to go back to where you just came from.
Right.
Same thing with him. He finds another girlfriend in the area. He ain't going back to where he was. Right. You know what I mean? So you got to think of it that way. So you can't spend a ton of time. My biggest thing is I don't hunt huge pieces of woods, like 300 acres plus. I hunt small pieces.
Okay.
That's the key to it.
What's small to you?
50, 60 acres.
Okay.
Of woods.
Okay.
you know.
So these are like areas that you've identified as the 50, 60 acres are just habitat that you identify as deer habitat, not necessarily a boundary marker or a stone wall or anything like that. This is just pieces that you identify as areas that you think a big buck is living in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, we'll spend some time in it. I mean, literally, it takes 10 minutes to get out of your vehicle, walk in the woods, ask permission first, even if it's not posted, find out who owns the property, knock on the door, be polite, and be like, do you mind if I hunt your property? They may say no. And if they say no, just respect that and move on.
Yep.
Even if there is a monster buck in there. You know what I mean? But, I mean, the biggest thing is ask permission first. If they give you permission, then proceed. Go in. You only need to go in 10, 20 feet and just scout around a little bit. That alone will tell you what's going on out there. You know what I mean?
Right. Do you is there any commonality to the pieces of property that you're encountering? Like, you know, you're a good identifier of patterns. You kept journals. You were looking at certain times of the day. You were looking at certain areas, certain weather patterns. Is there any kind of like commonality to the places that you're actually killing the bucks or where you started out on? Are these 60-acre spots, do they have anything in common?
Yeah, they have a lot in common. 90% of them have swamp abutting it. Every one of my properties I hunt, there's a brook that runs through it, so you have fresh water at all times. The other thing is you want to pay very good attention of, you know, their food source, their water source, and their bedding area. It's the three areas you want to really, you know, look at because they have sight, smell, and sound. So they're going to hear a running brook. That's where they're going to go once they're hit. You know what I mean? If you put a shot on one, they're going to go to water. So you got to keep that in mind. And the swampy area is where a deer's going to go when they get really pressured because it's thick, it's dense, it's dark, and a lot of hunters don't spend a lot of time in swamps. I turned to that just last year. That's where I shot my buck. You know, it was a big swamp, and it was just the weather was perfect, the wind was perfect. The feeding area I was sitting on his feeding area. I wasn't maybe 60 yards from the watering hole because there's a brook that runs right down through it. If you paid attention to some of the pictures, you could see the brook when I was pulling the deer out. You could see the brook in the background. The swamp was right there, so it was good, thick, dense cover. If he needed to bail out real quick, he had a place to literally 50, 60 yards. He was in the swamp, and there was no way you were going to get a shot, and he was going to feel comfortable. So you got to factor in all three of those things when you do that. And all three of those things are on every single property that I hunt. Okay.
And when you're looking at these feeding areas, and understand that in New Hampshire, a feeding area might be different than a feeding area in Ohio or Big West. You know, what's a feeding area to you? What does that look like?
So what I really focus on in early season, so we'll say bow season, are fields. I really focus on fields, swamps, but not big swamps, small swamps that are just abutting fields that are a little bit wet. They never dry up. Because again, during the bow season, I focus on doe. That's the first animal I'm going to put in the freezer. So I focus on doe for my bow, and I focus on fields, acorns, beech nuts, whatever I could find as far as feed-wise. But I will tell you, in the past, I've noticed a lot of stuff because I'll cut a deer belly open and I'll investigate it, once we kill it. Every one of my does, I've never killed a buck with my bow. Every one of my does in early season have all been grass, very minimum acorns, stuff like that. 90% of it's just that green grass with clover, stuff like that. So, so you're going to focus on fields and stuff early season. Then when we get into muzzleloader season, you're mid-season, you're coming into rut a little bit. You want to focus on more or less fatty foods, acorns, beech nuts, stuff like that. So where you see a lot of turkeys later on in the season, you want to focus on that area because where the turkeys are, the deer are going to be. Because the turkeys are eating all the deer poop. And a lot of people don't realize that because they didn't. Again, you gotta really focus on this stuff. But when you see deer, you'll see turkeys. And everybody's like, oh, the turkeys are eating the deer feed. Well, not necessarily. You shoot a turkey and you cut a turkey open, you see a lot of grass. You see very, very few beech nuts, acorns, like limited stuff. But you see a lot of deer poop. Because
they're eating deer poop.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
You didn't know that?
I've never heard that before. No, you're the first person to ever tell me that.
Yeah, you cut open a turkey's stomach, where it digested, where its pellet is, where it breaks down the food. Don't cut open its stomach because that's just going to be grass and stuff like that. You cut open where I don't remember what it's called. It's a gullet or whatever.
Yeah,
but it actually grinds up their food for them. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you cut that open and you look inside that, you're going to find 90% of that is just grainy deer poop. Because the deer break down the acorns, the beech nuts. Because turkey ain't going to swallow an acorn. The turkey ain't going to swallow a beech nut, and if it does, it's only going to be one or two.
Right. Until
it breaks down. So they want to focus on smaller things so they can get more in to digest faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and the deer poop is very small.
It could even be like a biological thing, like it's a enzymatic. Maybe there's enzymes in that poop that helps them digest other things, and maybe even gives them some better gut bugs to digest food and keep them healthy. There could be some evidence there because if you listen to some of the doctors, that they always talk about your gut bugs and how important they are to your overall health, and so maybe that's what they're doing. They're just finding good gut bugs and maybe replacing something that's missing in their diet to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, you'll learn a lot from animals if you pay attention to them.
That's true. That's true. Well, Doug, this has been a fascinating journey. I'd like to turn to a memorable deer hunt. Maybe it's the deer that you went on, and just kind of put all this together and break it down into step by step. The very day of the hunt, the day of the kill, going into a certain area and hunting a deer for as long as it took to get a look and get that shot, get that ethical shot. Let's take us on a journey.
It'll be this one. Yeah, I think my favorite one was the one that we shot this last year. It was a 9-pointer. He dressed out at 194, clean dressed. We set out that morning. We hunted 3 days prior, and no luck, no deer. We didn't see anything, not even a hide or hair of one. And we weren't seeing any signs. So we turned to this one piece where I said to my nephew, I said, and it was just him and I hunting. I said, man, if the deer are going to be here, they're going to be in this spot. This is where all the signs have pointed. And it's back to where we were, talking about the poop and the pee and stuff and the feed. I was heading to my tree stand, and lo and behold, my nephew was like, hey, look at this, and we saw the sign that we needed to see. It was black and white. So we backed out, grabbed some snacks. I grabbed my lunch pack because I'm a fat boy. I got to eat. I headed in. I followed the brook up. Now, I did the brook because the brook covered my sound walking in the leaves. The battling of the brook covered that. So if he was bedding, which I thought he was, up on the hemlock stand, which he was bedded up there. We did figure that out. I walked down that brook, and I dropped my nephew off way down the other end of the property, and he was just going to work his way back towards me at dark. He was going to go down there and sit in one of his other spots, and then he was going to work his way back towards me just before legal shooting time ended, and meet at the truck at dark. So I headed up on this one knob, and I saw more sign than I ever saw all year long, and I said, it's a good spot to have lunch. Maybe a deer thinking the same thing, you know what I mean? It's stupid thinking, but I sat down, opened up my backpack, I grabbed some doe pee, sprayed it on a tree real quick, sat down. I did that just for cover scent. I sat down and I opened up my sandwich and I was getting ready to take a bite, and I looked up and there was this monster 9-pointer staring down. He was on the other side of the ravine looking down in, and he was pretty much just looking where he really wanted to go, and I said, no way. And I have a tendency to get buck fever still, and even all the deer I've killed, I still get buck fever. So I talked myself down. I said, boy, don't mess this one up. He's a good one. It was muzzleloader season. And he come down that ravine, and he got halfway down, and he looked up at me, and I said, oh, no, he winded me. And he did a little tail flick, and his ears kind of perked up a little bit, and I said, uh-oh, this is over. It's now or never. So I talked myself down, and I said, you got to breathe. Just concentrate, take a good shot, breathe. And the only shot I had was right dead center of his back because he was facing downhill. And, boy, I put it right in his boiler room. And he hunched up real good, and I didn't reload the gun right away. The smoke cleared, and I see him turn. And he was just on a slow walk up the hill. And I thought to myself instantly, there's no way I just missed this monster buck. No way. So I reloaded the gun. And my nephew, he texted me, and he said, was that you? I said, yep. And then the conversation ended there, and he knew right away, I'm a pretty good shot. Start working your way this way. So he started working. He was better than 300 yards from me at that point in time. And I got up on this knoll, and I didn't see where he was standing where I shot. You could see the marks where he dug in, where he hunched up real bad. But I'm like, oh, man, there's no blood. There's no hair. 50 caliber bullet, you would see blood, hair, something, And I'm like, geez, this sucks. So I texted him. I said, don't ruin your hunt. Just stop where you're at. Sit down, relax, because I don't think I hit him. And he's like, all right, this and that. So he sat down. And our service there was real spotty, so it was more or less just a guessing game with seeing if he got the message or not. So I proceeded. I went up the hill a little bit, and I'm looking around, and I don't see nothing. And I'm like, I ain't going to give up. I had to have hit him. And no more did I say that. I looked down, and I saw just a little pin drop of blood. And I said, well, I got blood. That's a good sign. I went up about another 50 yards, and he opened up like you dumped a 5-gallon pail of blood on the ground. And I'm like, oh, my God. I was just like, oh, my heart was down in my stomach, at some point in time. And so finally I got up there, and it was weird. I got on his blood trail, and he went up the hill, and I'm like, he's heading up the hill. This isn't right. A deer, if it's hit hard enough, it's not going to go uphill. I know that better than that. But he did. He went up probably 10 yards or so, but he was smart, and I'll tell you how smart he was. He turned around in the exact same spot of where his blood trail was and walked right back down his blood trail, exact same spot, and then stopped, blood everywhere, and jumped over a ginormous rock, which I don't know how he got over without getting blood on it. And he died on the backside of it. So he wasn't even 10 feet from me for about an hour when I was looking for him.
Wow.
And this whole time. And my nephew finally got up to me, and I'm like, dude, I just lost blood right here. No blood, gone. He just vanished. No tracks, no blood, no nothing. And my nephew's like, hey, look at the blood splatter. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the blood splatter. He's like, it's going the opposite way. I'm like, no way. So instantly we turned around, we followed it, and you could see exactly where I thought there was 5 gallons of blood dumped out. It must have been where he stopped, and I was coming up the hill, and he just bailed. And he bailed over that rock, and that was where he expired right there. But I'll tell you, I never would have found him I had Adam Evans and Desha on speed dial because I'm like, I know I hit this deer now, and I got good blood,
Right.
And I had him on speed dial like every other time, but didn't need him. He was right there, and it was all history after that. I mean, it was insane to grab a deer like that, and as big as he was. I mean, to me, it was one of the biggest deer I've ever killed.
Yeah.
So, and I've killed a lot of big deer. I killed 10 pointers, 189, and everything else, but he was one of the biggest ones I've killed. And then shortly after, the wife killed hers, so that was even better.
Nice. Yeah, you guys had a great year, and it's interesting how they do kind of double back, and a lot of times the blood trail is more complex than finding them. It's astonishing. I've shot deer before, and I had blood everywhere, and I thought sure, but this was when I was a young hunter. I brought every hunter I knew that had 20 plus years experience, and they couldn't find it either. They came to the same conclusion I did, is that I don't know where it went, but you're not going to find it because we have no more blood beyond this one point. Yet you've got it looked like a murder scene. There was blood everywhere. It is what it is. Had no arrow. I had no blood to a spot, and I had guys in there that tracked deer for decades, and they couldn't find it either. So it happens.
Insane.
Yep.
Yes, it does.
Well, excellent, Doug. Let me run 10 rapid-fire questions by you. A little personality test here. All right, what's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Consistency.
That's good. I like that. We all have these things that we love to hunt with, and it's usually maybe it's a trinket or a device or a good luck charm or an actual something or other, and if we leave it in the truck or we leave it at home, it drives us crazy when we don't have it with us. What's that one thing for you?
Oh, that's my dad's old hunting license, the last one he had.
There you go. That's exactly right. What's your biggest pet?
I don't go with that.
Right. Yeah, no, I have those types of things too. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
Oh, geez, my biggest pet peeve, man. I have too many of them.
Some of us have a lot. I do.
Just not having enough patience.
Yep.
No patience.
Yep. Gotcha. How old are you today?
36.
36. All right. What would you tell the 16-year-old Doug Whitcomb, knowing what you know today about life?
Oh, boy. Slow down and pay attention. Relax.
Yeah.
And be nice. Be nice to people.
Be nice to people.
Don't be so mean.
You're at a hunting convention somewhere in the world. You meet a stranger. You strike up a conversation. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I own and operate my excavation company.
Yep.
And my hunting's my second business, really. I mean, that's feed my family.
Gotcha. Okay. What'd you have for breakfast today?
2 Hot Pockets.
Hot Pockets. Gotcha.
2 Hot Pockets, man. 2 Hot Pockets.
And you're not afraid, are you?
Nope.
Nice. All right, you can have your
It's venison jerky. I made some venison jerky. I did have some of that afterwards as a
beautiful
snack.
Yeah, that's a good snack. You get your own billboard on the side of a highway. It's a blank canvas. You can put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Oh boy, it's pretty much a love of family and have my girls in it with all our deer. That's a huge thing for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
My dad. Because that man has done more than anybody I know. He's ran successful businesses, multi-million-dollar businesses, sold them, built more, shot more bucks than you could ever think of, big bucks. This man has been the most successful person I've ever met in my life.
Gotcha.
Even when he's gone, he's still more successful than half the people I know.
Gotcha. Very good. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Oh, boy. Stress. Working nonstop. Getting up in the morning, not eating much for breakfast, eating crappy through the day, but making everybody's dreams come true with their business. You know what I mean? Building their, riding arenas or clearing a piece of property for them to bring their animal home so they can enjoy it the rest of their life and enjoy their life with the kids, make their life outside a little easier with the, doing less for them, because when we come in with a business, our big motto is we are the doing your honeydew list, and the more we do, the less you have to do, and the more time you get to spend with your family.
Gotcha. Very nice. All right. Gotcha. And then finally, what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Just hitting the ground running nonstop, we get up early in the morning, we cook breakfast, make a sandwich, throw it in a bag, and head out, water, snacks, and we head out. We do a couple pushes every now and then. If there's enough of us, usually it's just me and the wife or me and the kid. And we just go out, and every day is a scouting day, even during hunting season. Every single day is scouting. You know what I mean? We don't necessarily hunt every day. We scout every day, because every day that deer is going to do something different, and that's the day you're going to cut that deer off and be in the right place at the right time.
Gotcha. All right, very good. All right, those are the 10 rapid-fire questions, Doug. Well done. So sometimes we create more questions than answers on the show after the interview. Where can people find you if they have follow-up questions about this talk we just had?
They can email me at dougwhitcomb31@gmail.com. They can text me 603-209-8060, or they can just get on my Facebook page, Doug Whitcomb. You'll see my daughter on there on my profile picture and stuff like that. They can shoot me some private messages or whatever they need to do, and I'm more than happy to help anybody. Or if you're learning to just getting into it, or you want to get into it, I'm more than happy to help anybody. You know what I mean? And I've got a ton of friends that'll do the same thing. So.
Yeah. And that's what I appreciate about you, Doug. You've always been very generous and always willing to bring the next round of hunters in, or even the experienced hunters that need more information, more education, and you're always willing to give it. And I think that's one of the best traits about your personality. It's phenomenal.
I appreciate that. I really do.
Well, cool, man. It's been a great hour and 16 minutes or so, and I learned a bunch. I appreciate your time, and I really respect what you're doing, and you're a good bud, and then I've always appreciated what you've done for me and any of my friends.
Yeah, same thing for you, man. You guys are doing an amazing job down there. You're over there. You guys are awesome. So I really appreciate taking the time and putting me on here, and hopefully we help out some people,
I'm sure you will, and I do appreciate you coming on the show, Doug. Let's do it again sometime.
All right, buddy, take care.
I appreciate Doug coming on the show. It's not every day that somebody says, hey, they have a secret about buck hunting that we haven't heard. And, he did capture my attention when he said we're killing mature New Hampshire bucks without snow. That is not an easy task. I know I said that a couple times, but really isn't. Snow and tracking in New Hampshire is almost essential in a lot of ways, but it's about reading sign. And certainly I've been on my fair share of hunts where I read the sign and got it right. And Doug's doing it routinely. I do like that he is killing those bucks midday when lots of guys are back at the truck eating lunch. So anyway, thanks to Doug again, and hopefully we'll see him again soon. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay. I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm Jay Scott Ammann. We'll see you next time right here on the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunt Podcast.